We want you to get in the rhythm of the waves. All right, now this is going to be a real serious conversation. We're going to talk about all sorts of things. Fun things like the Pink Panther and waves and even nuclear waste. That's me down at the bottom down there, and here we go. So the power of history, politics, the history of politics is written in radio waves, printed words, and wars. The history of religion is written in holy books and scripture. History of the land is written in the geology of stone. The history of the atmosphere is written in tree rings and ice cores. The history of the sea is written in coral reefs, ocean sediments, and marine terraces. The history at San Onofre is an ongoing clash of powers. The clash between public safety versus Southern California Edison and governments. All right, how many of you have been out in the sea like that? All right, a few of us, yeah, I've been out there twice. Now, if you think that structures, human-made structures, can withstand the fury of the waves, power of storms, I think we all know that's not possible. So what is a wave? A wave is a disturbance traveling through a medium by which energy is transferred from one particle to another. You know, like in the stadium when you do the wave, right? That's the same thing. So the genesis of waves on Earth. Energy, the heat of the sun, causes temperature differences, and those create winds. And those winds transform some of the energy into ocean waves and currents. Oceans warm and expand and release more water vapor. The atmospheric rain patterns and intensities change. And those affect watersheds and sediment flows. The current rates of change are the largest since the rise of civilization. Most of you know this sort of stuff because we've all been around for a long while, right? And small imbalances feed big changes in nature, commerce, geopolitics, as well as sea level rise. So this pointer, I'm not sure how well it's going to work, but I'm going to have to point because this pointer, you can see it over here. So the big view is water is Earth's thermostat. And this down here in the lower left, where it says all water, that is all of the water on Earth. That is actually seawater and salt water. And on the lower right is the fresh water. So that little sphere is the equivalent of all the water, fresh water on Earth. And that fresh water can be solid ice. There's some stuff in Antarctica. It can be liquid water, or it can be water vapor. Now this graph is a little bit busy. On the bottom there, you see thousands of years ago. That's 24,000 to current day. Old is on the left, new is on the right. And you see the circle 0 to 4, that's the last 4,000 years. So 22,000 years ago, sea level was about 120 meters lower. That's about 400 feet lower. But it's become stable. You can see where the arrow goes up there. It was stable for the last 4,000 years. And where that oops is there, things have started to change rapidly again. And sea level is rising faster than it has actually since the Younger Dryas, which is roughly around 12,000 years ago. I think about 10,000. What is that, James? Is it 10 or 12?
12,611,800.
There we go. So sea level changes from many different types of phenomena. So on the bottom axis, left to right, you can see it's not a linear thing. It goes seconds, hours, months, decades, millennia. And then on the vertical axis, that's a change in sea level. And it comes from different sources. You see winds, tides, global climate. So if we start on the left side, you have short, fast waves. These are called capillary waves. And the restoring force for those is surface tension. And you can see there a capillary wave only changes less than a centimeter, about that much, about 1/3 of an inch. And then you get ripples and chop. And then this is where it becomes interesting for surfers. You get seeing the swell. You know, you can get large waves, swell that's over 20 meters. I think the largest ever ridden, I think, is Nazare, 30 meters. You would know, Eric, right? Something around 30 meters. I'm not in that class for sure. And then you move on to larger waves. You can see the stuff in orange. That's a tsunami. They've been measured paleo tsunamis, so old ones through sediments of over 100 meters. So it's quite impressive. You get a tsunami of 100 meters, and I think, was it 2 million years ago, something like that? The side of one of the Hawaiian islands fell off, and they think it was like a 300-meter wave. So it's 1,000 feet, roughly. Anyway, then you get storm surges, you get tidal fluctuations, and barometric, that's like when you see the pretty person doing the news channel, you know, and they go, oh, we got a high pressure here and low pressure there. Well, the high pressure actually causes the water to go down. Every millibar is 1 centimeter, like 1/3 of an inch. And you can have easily a 5 or a 10 millibar change, which can change the surface of the water by 5 or 10 centimeters up or down, depending on the high pressure or low pressure in the area. And then you have the 29 days there, that's in the tidal period, the orbit of the Earth and the Moon around each other. And then you have seasons. Believe it or not, the seasons change sea level also, because as water warms in the summer, it actually expands and it causes a small change in sea level. And then you have El Nino, which is multiple years, and the sunspot cycle. That's about 11 years, and in a strange little way, the sun actually changes how much energy it emits, roughly an 11-year cycle. Those are called sunspot cycles. And then you have ocean warming and industrialization. We don't know how much change that's going to cause. And then you have Milankovitch cycles, which are way beyond the topic of this thing. They're orbital dynamics between the Earth and the tilt of the Earth and the eccentricity of the orbit, whether it happens in summer or winter. And believe it or not, in the northern hemisphere, we are 93 million miles away from the sun in the northern summer. And the southern summer, it's at 90 million miles away, excuse the units. But it's closer in the southern hemisphere summer. So winds across the Sahara. That's Africa there. Storms come across, hot, come across the Atlantic, warm the ocean. More water vapor in the atmosphere can cause hurricanes, heavy rains. So as the Earth is warming and the ocean warms, you get heavier rains. And these heavier rains cause more sediments to flow, because sediment flows in watersheds, it's not linear. It's like if you get twice as much water, you don't get twice as much sediments. You actually can get 4 times as much sediments. In some cases, even 100 times more sediments. So what's happening in the Sahara will affect us way over here in the West Coast. Then the jet stream. Basically, it's a polar rotation of winds, and it's an atmospheric wave, a river of water vapor, which produces rain, snow, heat, and it transports dust. Now, you wouldn't think dust makes a big difference, but what happens is when the dust goes into areas where there's ice cover, in the Alps or in the polar regions, it actually changes the amount of energy that's absorbed and melts the ice faster. So dust being transported is a big dynamic there. And it also causes larger meanders. You can see where it says number 4, where it's cold. You get, that's over Texas there in North America, on the, just where cold is written. And you can have Texas freezing 1 week, and then the meander goes around, you get a warm area, and it can be 90 degrees the next week. That's because the meanders of the jet stream are becoming larger. That has to do with an imbalance, and Art Miller can tell you more about that, but I can't. And these warmer areas, let's see, what's for dinner? Oh, okay. These warmer areas cause ocean heat waves. And these ocean heat waves affect all sorts of things. The fish and the plants need stable habitats. There you see the, just below the word heat waves, you'll see a kelp bed. And that kelp bed can come and go because of the temperature of the water. Kelp needs the holdfast, the bottom, the roots equivalent, to be in 14 degrees or colder water. And which plants and which fish live in areas is dependent upon the water temperature. And then a subtle thing happens, unless you're an oceanographer kind of guy interested in dissolved oxygen. On the right-hand side, you say oxygen requirements. So the colder the water is, the more oxygen the water can absorb. So as the ocean warms, have less and less oxygen in it. What happens to all the little fishes? Well, you can see the clownfish needs a lot of oxygen. It's moving around all the time. You know, you get down to the perch and the shad, and you know, the different species. Tuna is right around 6 milligrams per liter. As it gets hotter, you end up having nothing really happening except if you're a halibut. You just sit there and wait, right? And that's okay. But the marine mammals that eat some of these species, they'll starve. So what happens in the warm world is important as the ocean has heat waves. Little subtle thing of also what happens is as the rain changes, there you see where it says surface runoff, just to the right of the word out. What happens is, as industrialization happens, you have less water soaking into the water table, but as people build more and more houses, they need more and more water. So what happens, they suck the water out, and that causes what's called saltwater intrusion. The water comes in from the ocean, replacing the fresh water, and you end up having crops failing and all sorts of problems because of too much water being brought out. This is close to the last nerd slide here. So below the surface, you have a whole bunch of sand being transported along what's called littoral cells. And you can see Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, San Pedro, Newport. We're down here near La Jolla Canyon, and that little star, that's where San Onofre is. And so that sand that comes off either the erosion of the cliffs or from the watershed runoff, the sediments, that goes into the littoral cells and gets pushed along by waves. And interestingly enough, this is some research done in the Netherlands. Depending on what type of sand you have, you get different types of river deltas. And that whole dynamic is really depending on what's happening in the Sahara. It's all connected. So Eric, you were talking about surf breaks. Just the change in the rain can change an offshore bar and change a break. And different wave climate can then change where that sand is moving. So a little bit about waves. So as the waves come into the shore, the wave basically, the front wave, if you will, it runs into shallower water and it sort of slows down. And the one behind keeps going a little bit faster. And so the wavelength shortens and it makes the wave steeper. And when the ratio of height to length is about 1 to 7, it'll break. And there you can see the waves breaking. That's in shallow water on the right. The upper right is Scripps Canyon there, Black's Beach. And the lower right, I think, is in Baja somewhere. But so as the waves approach the shore, they change their shape, and they lose their energy. Now, you've seen people, paddle, catch a wave, do the drop. I don't know, raise your hand if you know how much power is in the waves. Actually, I did it in English units and imperial units. For a 3-foot wave with a 10-second period, there's about a kilowatt per width of wave crest. So you're on a wave, you've basically got a horsepower pushing you forward. And that's the power of a wave, just a 3-foot wave. When you get really big, that's why people can go much faster and they ride those little guns, real narrow boards, because they can go much faster with a narrower board. Yes, question?
How does power scale as you increase wave height?
Short answer is it's a square of the height, and it's linear with period.
With what? Period.
Wave period, yeah. Okay. It's a little bit more involved in that, but it's square the height.
Thank you.
Okay. Now it gets really fun. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now that's Kelly Slater at Trestles. And what happens to a hard body when it meets the surf? Now we're not talking about Kelly Slater's hard body. He's at Trestles near San Onofre, where the 2028 Olympic surfing event's going to happen. Raise your hand if you know about that. Trestles is where it's going to happen. A few of you there, yes. So raise your hand if you know about the 1,700 tons of nuclear waste at San Onofre. Yeah, I'd say roughly a third to a half. You're raising 2 hands, so you know about more waste than we know about, yeah? Okay. And I've heard it been said, I wish I could remember who said it, but nuclear power is clean if you ignore all the waste. So this is a really busy slide, but SONGS, as it's abbreviated to, it's an issue of radioactive waste versus the Pacific Ocean. I did this calculation just a couple weeks ago. SONGS generated about 100 times more power than a nuclear submarine when it was operating. It was about 2,200 megawatts, and a nuclear submarine is around 20 megawatts. So imagine that. That plant was producing as much power as 100 nuclear submarines. So the good part about San Onofre SONGS was it operated from 1968 until 2013 and produced 2,200 megawatts. I mean, we all used it. It's a great opportunity. The bad is it got decommissioned in 2013. That's a whole nother story. You could lecture on why it got decommissioned. And the ugly is that the 1,700 tons of waste is still there. And down at the bottom, you see this oops. And I wish my pointer worked, but if you follow the coastline right here, up, and you look, you go, wait, that really juts out a lot, doesn't it? It's like, wait, that really even shouldn't be there. So what's happening is the power plant, which they did the initial stuff in the 60s, they actually excavated the overburden down to what's called the Monterey layer, I think Monterey Formation. And this is in a tsunami zone. If you look at the tsunami map, you'll see it juts in there where this is. So this is in a tsunami zone. And it's not in the natural lay of the land. It's actually out of sync. So remember that first image with the ship in the heavy seas? What's going to happen here after a while? Well, you know what? It's already happening. Look at over here in the lower left, you see that that's rebar. That's right from the edge of the seawall. So what is San Onofre? It's 1,700 tons of hot waste. It's only 100 feet from the Pacific Ocean, and it's 5/8 inch steel between you and disaster. That's as thick as my thumb. Theophilus thistle, the successful thistle thresher while sifting it. No, you don't want to hear that. So it's that thick of a steel canister. It's the shape of like a monster drink, those canisters. Thin, long, they're about 17 feet high, so it'd be about as high as the ceiling in here, and the width of my arms, roughly. And it's just awaiting a black swan event, something that is unexpected but completely possible. COVID was a black swan, yes ma'am.
Well, a black swan event notwithstanding, how about just the saltwater intrusion?
Oh, the saltwater intrusion isn't exactly a problem here, with the exception that the bottom of the canisters are only 40 centimeters, or like 18 inches above the water table. Now, I'll show you some slides in a moment that'll show you what will happen, possibly happen. But you can have a earthquake, a tsunami, sea level rise, storms. What you see here is an infrared image. I took that image and I took the one up above. So the top one is a normal photograph. The lower one is an infrared image, and you'll see the different colors which represent the different temperatures. The more white it is, the hotter it is. Now you see the little rows here? Those are those same rows as right there. And there's 73 of those canisters. And why are they hot? Because the 73 canisters are, what, 53? How many more off on the left, where it's just above the word radioactive decay? To the left, there's some horizontal ones, or further back, but they're actually even hotter. But they output over a megawatt of power continuously, and they will do that for decades and decades. Hey, James, how long will it keep hot?
Well, I mean, a long time.
A long time, all right. And and the radioactive decay is what's creating that heat. And those hot spots on the horizontal, the vertical ones here, are 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 48 C. And each one of those 73 containers, it has more radioactive waste than was released at the Chernobyl accident. Each one of those 73. So it's not a really good, fun thing. And then there's ongoing water and air discharges. Allie can tell us all about the water stuff. But the air, it's over 120 millirems per year, which is about 10 times higher than what the EPA allows legally. I don't know how they get away with it, but they do. So I was going to bring a dog leash and some plastic bags as a prop. So a nuclear plant is like having a dog. Both produce hot waste, right? And the radioactive waste is like hot reactor poop, right? Reactor poop, that's all it is. And if you already have difficulty getting rid of your dog, the last thing you want to do is get more dogs. And so first, solve the poop problem. Now, the US has 100,000 tons of radioactive waste sitting with no federal repository to take it to. 100,000 tons. There's only 1,700 tons at San Onofre. Unfortunately, San Onofre, in my opinion, is the worst location. Turkey Point in Florida is another bad location. Anyway, I think this is my own quote. I love the smell of radiation in the morning. Yeah. So what's inside one of these canisters? You have some self-certified canisters. I mentioned it's sort of the shape of a monster drink. And on the left here is how the Europeans do it, most of the world. They have wall thicknesses around 15 to 18 inches thick. Holtec has 5/8 inch thick stainless steel. And they are self-certified. And I just brought up a couple of things here. So Boeing 737 MAX was not certified by the FAA. It was certified by Boeing. And they had a couple of fatal crashes. And then OceanGate, the Titanic, the sub that was diving on the Titanic, it was not certified by the pressure vessel code for human occupancy. They self-certified. And of course, we have Holtec. They're not certified by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They're self-certified. And they've already been violated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And they're only certified for guaranteed for 25 years. Well, who's going to guarantee it? So the center of these things are like the temperature of a very hot oven. It's around 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And each canister radiates about 1.5 kilowatts, so 1,500 watts. That's like a microwave cooks a potato in 3 minutes. So imagine 73 canisters cooking a potato every 3 minutes basically for eternity. Not a really good idea. Is it going to fail? Yeah, probably. Anyway, the Price-Anderson Act from 1957 limited liabilities, and it was expanded in 2024 to adapt for what's called SMRs, small modular reactors, with a limited liability to the year 2065. I won't be around, but anyway, in my opinion, it's like issuing new dog licenses with limited responsibility for dog poop and bites. You know, what are you going to? I mean, hey, yeah, go ahead, build all these things. We haven't figured out what to do with the reactor poop yet. But yeah, we'll give you a permit. Go ahead. It's just, and then in the lower right, you see salt-induced crevice corrosion and all sorts of things. Oh, question there.
In that array of canisters, like how old is the oldest one?
Say again?
In that array that you were showing us, how old is the oldest canister?
They were put in, I think the earliest 2013, so they're already 10 years old. 10 years of that 25-year guarantee. But of course, if they fail, Holtec doesn't have enough money, and I'll show you the evacuation zone. Yes, Amelia.
How long do you think the canisters are going to last?
Well, I hope it lasts until I'm not around anymore, but I don't think that's another discussion. But there are all sorts of problems, but if you'll see in a moment, I'll show you what other things can happen other than tsunamis. You can get slumps and stuff. Another question?
Is that 1.5 kilowatts of power just coming from the...
Each one.
But is that just at the top, or is that the entire cylinder?
Well, the heat is generated inside by the radioactive decay. So it's like, make an analogy, you got one person in a phone booth, right? A human outputs about 100 watts, generically. Now you put 10 people in that phone booth, it's a little bit warmer in there. But if you turn on a fan, you cool the outside people, but the people in the inside are getting really warm. That's how it is in this. It's 500 degrees in the center, roughly, give or take. That answer your question? Yeah? Yeah. Yep, another one?
Taking a step back, what was the benefit of building a nuclear power plant so close to the ocean? Is it cooled by the water intake from the ocean? That was the main reason to build it so close?
Yeah, to my knowledge, virtually all nuclear power plants, including submarines and aircraft carriers, need coolant water. So they pull in water, runs through a heat exchanger, pushes it back out. So San Onofre is nicely located right on the ocean. You don't have to run piping quite as far. I actually worked on that in the 1980s, worked on the discharge. Okay, moving along. Okay, it's the wrong location. It's in the wrong location because we got rising sea level, more powerful waves, and doing nothing pretty much guarantees a massive environmental disaster in our future. And lower left, there's a paper written in 23, Peter Bromiski, I think a couple of us know him. And basically, wave heights are increasing. So you get really intense storms, the amount of energy going to the ocean is increasing. So why is this the wrong location? Now, if you look at that picture on the right, that's in Portugal. Look at the size of the blocks compared to those people. That's what the ocean did to those blocks. Look at this feeble infrastructure over here at San Onofre. Look over here, it says high tide flooding. Those rocks are pushed over the initial walkway every time you get, basically once a month when you get the high tide cycle. And when you get storm waves, it actually overtops the higher barrier there. So why is it in the wrong location? So recent studies show, this is 3D imaging, so side scan, sonar, sub-bottom profilers, and LiDAR above ground. And this is a beautiful image. So San Diego is on the right-hand side there, and then going north is this direction. There's Blacks, where you see the surf, and then you see Songs, and you see surf over at that's Newport. And then here's Santa Catalina Island. Now, if you look at the coastline between the two words of surf, you'll see where Songs is, the coast sort of juts out. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen. So you'll see in the next slide that things are moving around there. And remember, this was designed and built initially in 1968, I think, operation. So there's faults. So once again, new research. So they're geological faults. I think it's a 7.5 magnitude is what they currently accept as sort of what can happen along the Newport-Inglewood fault zone. And that's now contiguous with the Rose Canyon fault, which is right out there. And then offshore, you have the San Diego trough. Both of those are capable of 7.5 magnitude. Both of those would cause substantial harm to the structure at Songs, at San Onofre. And the whole thing could slip down. Now you see where Songs is, it can slip down and out. And I'll show you a paper in a moment. And at the Echo Arch, since 1996, it's been sliding, it's been slumping down. So this isn't like hypothetical, it's already happening. And this is less than a mile south of San Onofre. You can see the dome there in the distance. So this is an inset. This picture on the lower right is actually looking at an oblique angle from afar. So it's not like, when will it happen? It's already happening. So it's in the wrong place for that reason. It's also in the wrong reason because of slumping. Like when you get really, really tired and you start sliding down in your chair, like you're probably doing now because it's getting too long, you are slumping down. Well, that's what can happen. It can slump down. You see the Monterey Foundation? The slip surface, it can slip down. All of San Onofre could hypothetically slip down. And this paper by Adam Young in 2015, he's a researcher at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. This is not like, oh, maybe this will happen. It's already happening. Watch. And watch there on the upper left.
Oh my God.
Watch the ridge. And watch the sea of sand coming. It's the whole thing slipping down, slumping down. That black section is about 15 feet high, that wall of sand. And the slip up there where it's a little bit darker color, that's about 15 feet also. So the whole thing just slipped down 15 feet. Now, if that happens at San Onofre, you get 15 feet lower. It's complete and utter disaster. And it's feasible, that whole section offshore in those nice side scan sonar images, that portion of the coast that sort of juts out a little bit, that's possible submarine landslide. And in the last 15 years, they've done research and they've determined that these submarine landslides are about 100 times more frequent than they thought before. So new techniques have determined this. And that's not just here in Southern California, it's the whole world in the Mediterranean, Atlantic, Pacific. So everything's connected, almost done here. So watch what happens when something goes into the sand. Now watch. When it comes back, watch, see the fish? Look, see the fish go? And then the backwash, right? All grinding everything into smaller pieces. There the fish go again. So if anything gets into the surf zone, you're going to have all sorts of organisms partaking in the joy of new particulates, new organisms that metabolize the radioactive waste. So, getting close here, ask your realtor, where would the property prices bottom out? Think about it. The evacuation zone is 100 miles in diameter, and 8 million people live in that. So ask your neighbors, hey, ask your family, what do you think? You feel lucky? 8 million people in that evacuation zone, but what I just showed you, if it gets into the surf zone, you get aerosols. These are these, you can smell the ocean when the wind's blowing onshore and you got waves, you can smell the ocean. Sea air, well, it'll be radioactive air. So on a grander scale, ships are coming and going all the time. Stuff is transferred all over the world, just like COVID spread all over. Well, radioactive waste will do the same thing. All these ships are going all over. At any one given time, there are about 50,000 large ships at sea at any one given time. And those are ships over 1,000 tons each. Some of these are 100,000 tons. I think the largest is over 200,000 tons now. What can we do? Last couple slides. So you can resist coastal developments. You can resist when people want to build things in areas where surf and sediment interact. And you can ask for resilient designs for houses, roads, bridges, pipelines, and avoid obsolescence, which means like, oh, okay, got a pothole, let's just cover it over, and next rain, it's the same problem again. Demand things. It's an issue at San Onofre of public safety versus a power company and governments. I talked about this, the Price-Anderson Act. So mind your reactor poop at San Onofre at 1,700 tons, and Diablo Canyon has a similar amount, and there are 50 additional operating nuclear power plants that all generate nuclear waste. And we have 100,000 tons of this stuff sitting around. This is not against nuclear power. This is just figure out what to do with the waste. Simple. Dog poop, reactor poop. Hey. And it's an international issue with sea level rise and stuff. Jakarta, the whole capital of Indonesia, is sinking. They've chosen to actually relocate Jakarta because it's a major issue. What are they doing about San Onofre? Diddly squat. So get active and engage. Let's remove nuclear waste from San Onofre. Mobilize and be seen at park entrances. Hopefully Stephanie will help organize stuff. Talk to Stephanie. We're trying to get some people together to have some signs. You're entering a radioactive zone at the entrance to San Onofre State Park. Also at the overpass at Baseline Road there, right at the where you'd get off to go to the park, and possibly in San Clemente at city council meetings and other places. You need to be seen, and that'll change. This is a threat that most people don't really know exists. I mean, half the people know of it. Now, everybody hopefully in this room knows that it exists, but the general public has no idea. I didn't know until Bart Ziegler came up to me after I gave a presentation and says, well, what do you think about the 1,700 tons of nuclear waste at San Onofre? I said, huh? I didn't know. That was 2023. Anyway, you can change regulations. You can get involved with surf clubs and realtors. Get in touch with the not-for-profit organizations. Of course, Samuel Lawrence Foundation, you know how to get a hold of that. Surfrider is active. Patagonia.com, the local Cardiff store, is certainly active in coastal stuff. Once again, where would real estate prices bottom out? And do you feel lucky? Where's your dog or cat? I looked this up recently. Raise your hand if your household has a dog. Sort of, right. The national average is 40%. 40% of households have dogs, but it's our nuclear power plants only produce 20% of the power. So we are in the majority with dogs. So we got to mind our dogs, right? So that's a book that some of you. Oh, there's a question.
What is the evacuation zone based on?
Bart, what is the evacuation zone based on?
That's kind of a good question.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good question. I'm going to give it to Stephanie because she's recently been dealing with that.
I can summarize, but and I can also refer you to exact data. SCE did their own research to see what was dangerous and deemed it not necessarily that dangerous and pulled back emergency evacuation requirements. So the power company paid for their own research to show that it wasn't that dangerous. It clearly is dangerous, and we're working at Samuel Lawrence Foundation to take the new data to the NRC to help update, so there are safety regulations. If you go to the CDC now, what they recommend if San Onofre catches on fire, falls into the ocean, is to get out of your car, because radiation will go right to your car, to get into a house. There's no houses on the 5 freeway where this is, and then stay tuned for what's next. That's straight from the CDC. So we're working with the public health to help raise production.
So it was generated by the CDC?
Yes. And I can share this. It's on my complaint, so.
Okay. All right, almost done. So hopefully waves and beach. Oh, another question. Yep. Where is it?
Right here.
Okay, right here. Yes.
Will you comment about how worthless the NRC is? And second part of the question is, I have been following our stinking worthless Coastal Commission around since 2013. I've been at numerous meetings where we begged them to do something to get it off the damn beach. We have had big meetings. I mean, we went to one in Long Beach where people begged them to get thicker casks, and they're completely tone deaf to us, our state coastal commission.
I would say send them flowers.
That's true.
I mean, yeah, that's about all you can do, right? Thank you for your perseverance. Any replies or comments on that one?
Where is it proposed that the nuclear waste would be moved to?
Good question. Congress, I think it was the late 80s, said there should be 2 repositories for commercial nuclear waste. One was going to be on the East Coast, one was going to be the West Coast. The one on the West Coast was Yucca Mountain. That got defunded. So first the East Coast got defunded, then they said, oh, okay, we're just going to do Yucca Mountain. And then Yucca Mountain got defunded in the Obama administration, I think 2015 or something like that. So there is no repository. That's the major problem. There is no place to put the commercial nuclear waste. And that was sort of a point I'm trying to make with a nuclear power plant produces more waste than 100 submarines, about the same. And so where do you put all the waste? The Department of Defense knows where to put it. They take it to Idaho. They have a place, but there is no place for commercial nuclear waste. Yep. Allie.
Yucca Mountain wasn't just political. They have found that water is seeping in and it cannot be used for dry storage.
Right, Yucca Mountain geologically actually. Yeah, so Yucca Mountain had geological issues in, behind Harry Reid not wanting it to be in Nevada also. There was a whole bunch of stuff. And actually, let me finish here. And then we can ask James Day what he thinks about Yucca Mountain. Okay, that's it. We got questions on. All right.
What happened?
Oh. Wait till the music stops. Hear the music? Wait, when the music stops, we can dance. No. All right. I want it to be light, you know, nuclear waste is a fun thing.
Why can't we just send nuclear waste to space and then let it just blow up in there?
What's that?
Why can't we just send nuclear waste to space? Like, put nuclear waste on a spaceship, then rocket it all the way to space, and then just let it blow up there.
Well, let me ask my friend Elon Musk. I think the Starship, they can launch about 100 tons. So it would take 17 successful Starship launches just for San Onofre. But San Onofre has a problem. Those canisters they're in aren't legal for transport. So they'd have to build the Starship launch place at San Onofre. That'd be rough. No, basically, you can't send it to space because there's just too much of it.
What if it blew up on the way up?
And what if it blew up on the way up? That's a good comment, right? It'd be bad. So, yeah, Amelia thinks it'd be a bad idea. All right, James. James, comment on, since Yucca Mountain is not available, why was it a bad idea and where should we perhaps lobby to put things? Or you lobby? James is a geochemist.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have states and you didn't have laws, where would you put it? That's really the question. Because the largest issue here is really political. And so, if you were to put it anywhere in this country, you would put it in stable plutonic regions that haven't seen geological activity.
You put it in a stable region that hasn't seen activity for billions of years. Hundreds of millions of years. See, that's a good spot.
Who's from Wyoming?
Anyone from Wyoming? Oh, good. We can put it there. Put it in Wyoming. Okay, Allie, another question.
There's a community near San Bernardino called Brownsburg.
Groundsburg, say again? Groundsburg.
They have offered to take the waste, but Southern California Edison just treats it like a joke. I think we should look into it.
Well, there's a Supreme Court case. I don't think it's been finalized yet. The Supreme Court case that was it Texas and New Mexico sued for the private companies not to have the ability to transport waste and do a private repository. And it was basically around, does the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, have the right to issue a permit for commercial storage? And that's, I think it's still in the Supreme Court, I think that case. In the back?
Is there any technology or science systems that you know that will neutralize the waste?
You mean reprocessing of waste? Yeah, is there any technology for reprocessing of waste? Actually, James, you could probably answer that better.
There are. I mean, it's just very expensive. And these companies that want to make money rapidly, and they don't want to spend. It's just like mining. Mining remediation is very problematic. So yeah, I mean, you don't have laws in place to protect consumers after the waste is produced. It's a cowboy society.
But the technology exists.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it.
The French actually tried to reprocess commercially, and I think they shut that down, if I'm not mistaken, because it wasn't economical.
I would
What?
like to add to the reprocessing note that it makes more toxic, right? A more toxic chemical comes out from it, so it's not the positiveness that like recycling aluminum can is. It actually creates more waste that's more vulnerable to be used for weapons. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, so basically what happens is they use one of the isotopes of uranium-235, and it can break into one of 130.
So the uranium isotopes break up into many different ones.
Well, no, because uranium-238 doesn't do this. Uranium-235 does. It's a fissile atom. So it can break into like cesium, and strontium, and neodymium, and all these other things. So you produce these things which normally naturally it wouldn't do. just decay through decay. But because what we're doing is we're hitting neutrons and we're changing that behavior, we're producing all of these byproducts that you wouldn't normally see. Now those byproducts do have good uses. For example, in lead films, if you go for a scan, they might give you radioactive nuclei into your blood. So that can be very helpful. But overall, waste products is not being used. You don't see the uses.
Okay, so it can get more complex when you start looking at the child isotopes. Mary in the back, Mary Monk.
If you have eggs that you know are only 5/8 inch thick, is it not possible, or is it possible to remove them and put them on more stable
All right, so
as an initial mitigation?
So Mary's question is, if we know that the canisters are only 5/8 inch thick, is it possible, like, put them into something more stable or robust, like the Europeans do it with 15 inches of concrete and steel? Well, the answer is yes, it's completely possible. Congress hasn't allocated any money, and unfortunately, they're dismantling San Onofre, and they've already dismantled the moon pool, where you would take those canisters and put them into another container. The really, really crazy thing is those canisters aren't legally, you can't transport them. They're not legal for transport. The European casks and the ones used for the Department of Defense, they're 15 to 18 inches thick. But these ones at San Onofre, you can't even take them out. They're highly you'd get irradiated. When they go check, they check one of these, I think, every 5 years. They go with a robot to check it because it's so hot. So it's between a rock and a hard spot, a rock and a hot spot. I don't know how they do it other than building a whole structure over the thing and start all over again. But, yeah, okay, Steve.
Well, two questions. What about Finland? What about Finland? Don't they have a solution, or at least an attempt at one? Finland. And then it just occurred to me, to bring it up to the present day, taking, Trump's idea of sending in special forces to take the dust out of Iran and put it in, I think it was canisters, right? And these would be very transportable, but doesn't that set up an extreme risk?
Well, I hope that when they send the people over to Central Asia to get, Western Asia, to get the radioactive material from Iran, that they don't hire Holtec to do it. That would be, yeah. It's really a geopolitical thing that goes, there's engineering possibilities, but it's really a political overlay. That's why geopolitics comes into this question. Finland, actually, they deal with casks. They have these thick-walled canisters. I mean, there's casks in use in the U.S. I contacted a German company, GNS,
Gesellschaft für Nukleare
Systeme, for you Germans out there, and they used to operate nuclear plants in Germany, and then the Germans decided to get rid of their nuclear power, most of it, and that company GNS morphed into a, hey, we will now handle all this nuclear waste, and they are the largest, I think the largest in the world, and they've produced over 2,000 of these casks. So Finland probably uses GNC casks. The Swiss use it. The one that I showed earlier was from Switzerland. I think that's GNS casks. That company wrote to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and said, hey, why don't you use our cask? You know what the official letter, you know what the NRC said? They didn't even reply to the letter. I have a copy of that letter. The US doesn't want to deal with foreign technology, and we don't have the technology to any great extent. We have more tons of waste than we know how to deal with. Yes?
Does AI relate to nuclear waste?
Well, AI does relate to nuclear waste. You might be looking up there, power for AI and small modular reactors. So one of the issues that are, one of the issues is AI, artificial intelligence, use a lot of power. So where's that power going to come from? Are they going to be burning more fossil fuels? Or should they get small modular reactors and do that? Well, you can ask, for those of you that like to read, Adam Smith, you know, the guy, I think he died in the late 1700s, you know, talking about capitalism and, you know, sort of a hero for capitalists in the US. And then you can have Milton Friedman, who won a Nobel Prize in economics, and he wrote a book called Capitalism and Freedom. So I'm answering your question. It's complex. Do the people that want to build nuclear reactors have the right to build it? Or do the people have the right to not allow nuclear reactors? And then you can go on to a guy by the name of Noam Chomsky, who's written a lot of stuff. He wrote one book called Manufacturing Consent, which is you can convince people if you say things enough. This is done in politics all over the world. If you say things long enough, I can say Amelia was actually named after Amelia Earhart. You know, Amelia right here was named after Amelia. And I say that 50 times, and you know what? 90% of the people in this room will know that. But you know what? Were you named after Amelia Earhart?
No way.
No, she wasn't. But if I say it enough times, Noam Chomsky says, well, people just believe it. All right, yes, Stephanie.
I have a question. Are small modular reactors small, and is it a small amount of nuclear waste?
So small. I mentioned that they changed the modified the Price-Anderson Act to indemnify so that the nuclear power companies have a limited liability. And what they said in this new modification, they said, as long as the collective number of reactors doesn't produce in a location does not exceed 1,300 megawatts, it's considered only one reactor. So you can have 20 reactors producing a few hundred megawatts, or a few hundred megawatts. Let's just say in my example, 200 megawatts, and that would allow you to have roughly six reactors. If something goes wrong with all of them or one of them, you still have a platform, a ceiling to how much money you're responsible for. So I don't know how much waste, or let me rephrase it, how complex the waste is coming out of small modular reactors, since I don't think they exist yet, other than in small propulsion things for Department of Defense and other things. But I'm not an expert in that whatsoever, but I do know that the Price-Anderson Act got modified. Question?
Since there's no place to put it, and it's in the wrong packaging, the wrong cask, what's our ask to anybody?
Sorry, what's our...
11 years of guarantee where it's stored.
Yeah.
What's our ask? What are we going to ask anyone to do?
What are we going to ask anyone to do? My answer is organize, start making noise, and letting the elected officials realize that they better do something and work its way up. It needs to come from the bottom up, because the federal government is doing absolutely nothing. They thought about it and passed, for the repositories in the 1980s, and then never did anything. So it's not a top-down kind of issue, and they're not thinking about it. What they want to do is build more nuclear reactors. But we still got a waste problem. Here's a question in the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to on that same point, like what organizing is good and technology is good, getting people to good, but unless you have some sort of proposal.
Sorry, unless we have what?
If you have like some sort of proposal or idea, it's easier to gather.
What's the ask?
So what ideas are out there about?
Well, the top level ask is get it off the beach.
Well, sure, yeah.
But how would they do that? You said there's no way to do it. There's no place
Well,
to be trapped.
the federal government, because it's on federal land, it's on Camp Pendleton, no local community has any jurisdiction over that. So it's a federally controlled piece of land, and it gets a little complex, but the waste is sort of split up between entities, but it's all federally controlled. Unless the federal government does something, nothing's going to happen. So it's got to be people in the House of Representatives and the senators that passed legislation to fund a repository and to have the capital available to create structures good for storage of 100,000 tons. And I don't know the number, but it's something like 5,000 tons a year additional. James in the back.
I just want to clarify one thing. This warranty means nothing.
The warranty means nothing.
It means nothing. If there's a major catastrophe at San Onofre, there is no warranty. There is no security.
Yeah, I think it's, how many trillion did you calculate of damage if there's a, how many trillion?
They did an economic study with a great group out of Davis, and it's a $13.4 trillion problem if you isolate 50 miles from the waste site.
$13 trillion. I don't think Holtec has that kind of cash.
So again, I guess,
So-
what's the ask? I have an ask.
Okay. Is that, you're done? Jim? Yeah. Right. There's no, well, what would you ask?
I would say move it to new storage first, because everything else is going to take 20, 30, 40 years, the federal government.
Yeah, move it to new storage, absolutely. It's moving.
That's the ask.
But the new storage is a federal issue slash Supreme Court, which is part of the federal government, of course. They need to say that commercial storage of nuclear waste is legal. And right now, everybody's in gridlock. It's like the federal government isn't giving any money. The individual companies are just dying to store the stuff, because wouldn't you love to have a storage unit? You know, think of these storage units where you pay a few $100s every month to store your excess stuff. And what do? Oh, I want the job of storing nuclear waste. I get to store for a few thousand years. I want that job. So lots of companies want to do that, but they don't have the right to do it. Okay, here's a question over here. Yep.
Why don't they just build like a seawall at the San Onofre?
Why don't they what?
Why don't they build like a seawall to if like concerns are like sea level rise and then also like tsunamis, why don't they just build like a seawall?
Well, the reason why they don't build a seawall is because they don't believe there's a problem. Why should you build a seawall for a problem that no one wants to admit exists? Okay.
I do believe they built a seawall at Fukushima and the tsunami went right through it.
Yeah, Fukushima had a seawall. Yeah. And that was a 30-meter tsunami. Bart.
I have one idea. People don't know what to do, but I have an answer for people. I think what you should do right now is there's a number of groups fighting this. There's St. Clemente Green, there's Public Watchdogs, and there's Samuel Lawrence Foundation. It has a magnificent newsletter that comes out every month. I think the one thing we can do, correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, is to stay informed, to keep informed, and join Samuel Lawrence Foundation, sign our petitions, write to the Congress people, but you can start somewhere by being informed and share it with all the people you know, because few people know about this. It is a really opportunity.
That's why people should stand at bridges and the entrance to the park. Here's a question right there. Loud, say it loud.
Is there no capacity to have like an environmental lawsuit over this? Because you mentioned it's like irradiating like 10 times the amount of like allowed background radiation. Is there no way to like sue the federal government over negligence or any like lever to pull there?
There are. Unfortunately, Southern California Edison has a whole gaggle of lawyers, and I think the Samuel Lawrence Foundation actually sued, I don't know if it was Southern California Edison or not, to have an evacuation plan, and they lost in court because they said, why do you need an evacuation plan if nothing's going to happen? It's just this weird circular logic. Yes, they should have something, but lots of lawyers and almost endless money, and we paid for them. The question there? Yeah.
So it seems like the proposed immediate action you're trying to get is the NRC to respond to this letter from the GNC. Because like
GNS.
That tells you whether you're going to be able to move it, and then you can try to figure that, and you need to figure out the solution in place. Like that defines the solution space. So it seems like that seems to be, at least to me, the most practical next step for forcing an evaluation of this often.
Well, part of the problem is that
because if you can't move it, then you know that it has to be in place. If you can, then you can move forward with this like building of containers and then figuring out a site to offload it.
The unfortunate thing is Southern California Edison says, oh, of course we want to move it, but there's nowhere to go for it, blah, blah, blah. You know what? They don't view that there's a real problem. If you listen to the talking heads, if you go to their website and look what they say, oh, this is super. It's really funny. If you go, I really suggest, what's it called, Songs, or I forget the website. And you go to that place and they have these talking heads that come up once in a while, and they'll have radiation detectors. And it's really funny. They buy some ancient radium dial clock or something. They hold up and it goes, 1,000 counts a second or whatever it is. And then they go to San Onofre and they stand there and they go, look, it's only slightly above background radiation. Well, slightly above is over 10 times higher. It's beyond the beyond the Environmental Protection Agency's legal limits by a factor of 10. So it's just like they have their head in the sand because they're making plenty of money the way it is, and they don't have Southern California Edison doesn't have the technology to move it. They don't want to buy foreign stuff, and there's nowhere to put it anyway. So it's sort of like, well, you give us a place to put it, and we're interested in that. I think, is that it?
So you were saying that companies aren't allowed to have like nuclear waste material, but it seems like an exception has been made for Edison?
No, when you operate a nuclear plant in the U.S., the routine process for what you do with the spent nuclear fuel, which is between 3 and 5.
Why do we care about Edison's opinion here at all?
Sorry?
Why do we care about Edison's opinion at all?
No, but it's the same with all the nuclear reactor operators in the U.S. Basically, the process is they store it on site. That's what Diablo Canyon has, a similar on-site storage. Now, at least they have casks.
You're saying it's on federal land, right?
Right, at San Onofre is, right. But Diablo Canyon just got a 20-year extension to operate, additional 20 years. Okay, here's one.
So it's on federal land. SDG&E owned and operated the nuclear power plant.
Right.
So technically they own it, and it's just storing it on federal land.
They own the physical plant, and they have possession of the
waste.
Nuclear waste, right?
So doesn't it behoove the federal government and the DOD?
I like that word, behoove.
I understand that they're not going to accept that there's global warming because it's a hoax, whatever. But wouldn't it behoove them to secure it a little more and maybe even find a way to store it in Idaho, where the rest of the DOD stores the rest of their
No, you
nuclear
can't
waste?
store that amount in Idaho.
Okay.
That's why I did that calculation, because everyone goes, oh, well, the Department of Defense knows how to do it. So I did that calculation and go, oh, we have 50 reactors, roughly each one producing as much as 100 nuclear submarines. That's like 5,000 nuclear vessels. We can't handle it.
But isn't Camp Pendleton supposedly like the crown jewel of like our army or government or whatever?
Yeah, it'd be a problem if you lost Camp Pendleton.
Don't you? I don't understand how that doesn't ignite something in them to find.
Because Southern California Edison says it's not a problem. If you admit there's a problem, then you have culpability.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right, and that's illegal. I'm not a lawyer, but that's how it goes. If you say, oh yeah, we want to fix this problem, well, oh wait, how did this problem happen? Ah, you're responsible. Yes, Amelia.
What will happen to humanity if like nuclear waste gets out of like their containers?
Well, I don't know. Have you seen many science fiction movies?
I'm going to watch Project Hail Mary and like the theaters, but I didn't really watch science fiction movies.
Well, I'm not a biologist, but if there are any biologists here, we had a nice representation at the Nuclear Waste Symposium from, that was year before last at UCSD, and we had a biologist who's been studying radioactive waste and byproducts from atomic bomb testing in the South Pacific, and it's really bad. People get all sorts of health problems over time, and my wife and I were actually in Hiroshima last year in Japan where the atomic bomb was dropped, and I was in Nagasaki before that, and it's really not good.